doesn't have to say.
Love.
Alan Cox on 100.7 WMMS.
Knights of
Sidonia.
I almost said
Muse.
Caledonia, but that's where I was in Michigan this weekend.
She get played on the Knights of Caledonia. Yeah, how was it? You were in St. Joe, Benton Harbor, and you were out at
I was in St.
Saugatuck?
Joe, and then I was actually in South Haven, not Saugatuck.
Pardon me.
And I posted it incorrectly to my own social media.
South Haven.
But Friday night was probably one of the most interesting shows I've done in a very long time. It was a really, really cool venue. Or this was Thursday night.
This was which city?
This is St. Joe.
Okay.
St. Joseph, which is right near Benton Harbor, all
Sure.
that. It was in a really cool music venue, like an underground. It was like if you took the grog shop and put it underground and made it a little bit smaller. It maybe sat like 150. It started
Like that place in Tremont?
Coda?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, a little
Maybe
bit
a little
bigger.
bit
Yeah,
bigger,
a little
yeah.
bit bigger than Coda. I got there about 10 minutes before showtime, and there were 0 people there. So we waited 40 minutes for people to come. And there was like 20 people, but they all sat in the very, very back. But there was a guy who did a guest set who was legitimately 87 years old.
Yeah.
He like had to have a chair on stage that took him like 2 or 3 minutes just to get in and out of the chair. And
Friend of the owner, I assume?
Well, I guess he does comedy at this place every single month. He's there every month and does like 10 or 15 minutes. But it's mostly street jokes. It's this old man telling you grandpa jokes. And at one point, he like dropped his set list on the ground. But he was talking about facial recognition technology, which we've talked about on the show before, and how it has trouble recognizing black people or something. And
This was a
like,
black guy?
This is a white guy. And he was saying like how all black people think white people look alike, and how all white people think black people look alike, but how everyone should be concerned with Chinese people. That was his joke,
that was
right?
his
That
joke.
was his big
Yep.
joke. And then he like lost his train of thought because he dropped his set list. So then he started talking about like the Chinese government, and he went on this like
Why didn't you just pick his set list up?
Because it took him an hour. He tried to, and he was like
Oh.
shaking, like trying to like go down to grab his.
Were
set
people
list.
enjoying him? Was he
was
just more of a
nobody-
weird novelty?
Nobody
or?
really knew how to feel because it was like respect. This dude's old. He's up there.
But also like your
performing.
grandfather telling you weird jokes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he goes on this like weird thing about the Chinese government, and he's like fumbling over his words, and then at one point, right in the middle of this Chinese government rant, someone's phone rang at the table that I was sitting at, and I was just like, this is my life. This is a point when I sat there and I'm in this basement, 5 hours from home, and I'm like, I gave up a lot of things to do this, and like this is where my life's at.
And that
Like,
guy gave up nothing.
Right.
He just walked up.
turned
He's 87.
And I
Yep.
just kind of sat there and I was shaking my head and I was just.
He probably
giggling to
started
myself.
last year.
Yeah.
He's retired. His wife probably died.
I think
He's
I
got
have
nothing.
the
He's
video.
bored.
He doesn't.
Knows the owner, and he goes,
Right.
What if I come up and start telling some jokes about Chinamen?
Well, that's what I'm saying is that he's not. I have the video of. I don't know if
And
I can
out there,
play it.
they're not going to care.
What?
They're
Well,
like,
they were
yeah,
laughing.
cool.
The one dude made a super inappropriate racist joke and they got in an applause break.
Of course,
so it was
yeah.
just
A standing O.
I knew where I was at,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things.
Why
where
didn't someone pick up his set list? If he couldn't bend down to get it, why couldn't someone be like, here you go,
He
bro?
ended up grabbing it, but it was just.
But it takes him 50 years to do it.
Can I put this by the microphone and play it? I just want you to hear this guy's voice, is what it is. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it or not, but it's.
China's government has cameras all over China and complain.
That's it.
You stink!
So he's in the middle of a Chinese government, somebody's phone's going off, and I'm just like, it's a moment that made me laugh out loud, like where normally it probably should have depressed me. Where I was
But you're
like,
getting jaded now. You're like,
I
this
just
is right. This is a better story.
I kind of just sat there and I
Yeah.
laughed, and I was like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is what I do for a living.
Yes, nights like that are.
fun,
it was,
though.
It was only going to go as well as I let it go, if that makes sense. Like, I could have gotten on that stage all pissed off and aggravated because the feature act was not good.
These are all local people.
These are all local people.
Yeah.
I introduced myself to the feature act.
You
and we
found
had
this
already
place,
known
or
each
you
other.
got booked there?
This is a guy, a booker, who's actually now a councilman in Michigan. He's been a
Surprised
comedy
they didn't
booker.
use any of that against him when he ran for office.
Right, he's been a comedy booker forever.
Is it true that you spent many years booking an 87-year-old man telling jokes about the Chinese government?
That'll get him elected.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
But so this is a guy I've known for a really long time who runs probably 10 rooms in Michigan throughout the year. And so this happened to be 3 in a row that worked out nicely. But it was a very weird moment because in the past I've had shows like that where I've been really aggravated or annoyed, and I've taken that on stage with me, like, this is an art form and you, and I was just kind of laughed it off, and I was like, you know what? This is where my life is, and that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
I'm booked on this show the same way that guy is, so I'm not really in any position to be judging anybody. It just made me laugh that was.
But he was at the end of the beginning.
He was at the beginning, so the host went up.
She was the headliner.
I was the headliner,
Yeah,
so I went up at the end, and after the show
Right.
started 40 minutes late.
I didn't know if they like threw him up at the end. You're like,
No,
hey,
yeah,
here's Arlo
He was first. He
to
went
tell
up
you
first.
some.
And then the feature act.
And he's a
opened-
regular.
Yeah, the feature act opened his set. He was like, I think it's pretty incredible that we have 4 generations of comedians on this show. He was like, I think his name was Paul. He's like, the host name was Jerry. He's like, Jerry is a boomer. And then Paul's from the silent generation, which I've never heard that term before.
The
Silent
greatest generation I've heard.
I've heard
Silent.
greatest. He said silent
I
generation.
think he meant silent film generation.
Oh, well, he called it
Yeah.
the silent
No,
generation.
that's why it flopped.
And then he was like, I'm a Gen Xer. And he goes, and your headliner is a millennial. And one dude in the back was like, boo.
Okay, boomer.
Like,
It's putting the boo and boomer.
Yeah.
between the Chinese government rant and then the feature act opening his set with me getting a boo before anybody even knew who I was, I was just like, this is fine.
And she's female. Double boo! They're not funny.
Next,
And I'm going to tell her after the show that I usually don't find women funny, but she is funny.
I was glad there were no avocado toast jokes.
Next, you're gonna tell me you're a Democrat.
Right. It's just.
But your set went well?
It went well.
Yeah.
They needed to crack a little bit because they didn't really know what was happening.
Sure.
And neither of those guys really had jokes either. So when I went up and I hit them with
It's like going up cold.
Well, when I went up in my first 5 minutes, they're pretty like boom, 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 boom. They're like, oh, okay, we get it now. And they
Yeah.
kind of got into it.
Oh, this is an
and-
actual show.
Oh, people prepare material for this. But then the next 2 nights were great. The next 2 nights were like packed out, really
Old
fun
guy
rooms.
every night?
And the old guy was only on the Thursday show. Same host all weekend.
They bury him on Thursday.
Oh my God, this was such a crazy run. Saturday night, there was a dude. He was doing a character.
Now, where was Saturday?
Saturday was in South Haven.
South
Is the
Haven.
mullet guy?
Yes,
Which is a
so-
resorty town.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a summertime like booming. Apparently, it's like super like destination
In the summer, it's huge, yes.
Yeah, because like it's a really cute downtown. Like the whole strip is just. I would compare it to like West 6, where it's just a strip of
Yeah.
just bar that ends at the water. It's pretty cool. There was a good crowd. There was a guy who was doing a character. The character's name was Mason Dixon, and he was a stock car driver
Of course he was.
who turned stand-up comedian. And I talked to the feature. I knew the feature. We were friends on Facebook, and I was like, "Hey, man, is this guy like hosting or featuring?" And he was like, "Actually, I'm gonna do 15 minutes, and then he's gonna do 10 minutes as this character, and then I'm gonna go back up and do another 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna bring you up," which is
Real smooth show.
which is not how shows normally go. And at this point, again, I'm just laughing.
So this guy's like a
whatever.
bargain basement Larry the Cable Guy? Is
Kind
that,
of.
Yeah.
But this was his first time performing at this venue in the city that he lives in, so I'm guessing he was pretty new. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be exactly what you think it is. And it was. And he went up and he was like talking about how when he stopped racing stock cars and became a stand-up comedian, how this was his dream to one day open for Mary Santora. And I put this on my Instagram story, and he was like talking about how hot I was and how hooey, when you look at her, you get to wherever, and he's like going in this like fake accent, and I was like 2 full minutes just saying how attractive I was and how they're in for a real treat because I'm a lot to look at and all that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of sitting there and everybody's giggling and laughing and stuff. And then he did a song. He had like a washboard on his chest, and he's like doing this song about Jesus. It was a lot to handle. It was a lot to handle.
And the
this
crowd
weekend.
enjoyed him?
The crowd loved him.
So people really got whiplash going from that guy to you then.
Well, then the feature went up and did like 15 more minutes, and I went back up, and I was like, "Oh, I'm the hot chick you guys were waiting for. Glad you stuck around."
Check out
I
my
was
running sticks.
like, right, like
How about these gams?
That's the thing. You always undersell it and then overperform rather
It
than
just-
oversell. It's like,
Oh,
when, like,
yeah.
and I'm not just talking about like your looks, but even like, oh, this next comedian coming up is the best comic you've ever seen in your entire life.
That's why I tell
You're
people-
this is gonna be someone that's super famous someday, and you get to see him now. that actually makes the show way worse.
Oh, yeah, I was like,
Because
just
then
tell
they're
them I'm from
all
Cleveland.
right, so there's so much here to live up to, rather than just like, hey, here's your next performer, Mary Santora.
Right.
The silent generation are between the greatest generation and the boomers.
Oh,
So that's a
yeah.
demographic.
Oh,
So
see, I didn't know that.
late 1920s to mid 40s.
So that makes sense because they're just so it's a much smaller generation population wise, and they're not talked about as much because of the two more talked about generations around them.
Yeah.
But I do like the some of the questions on Google. What did the silent generation do for fun? Worked in the coal mines, probably.
Chinese government.
Yeah, there you go. They're considered
Lived.
the wealthiest generation. Well, all right.
Well, because stuff was a lot cheaper back then.
Right,
Well,
but there were
or-
multiple generations back then when things were cheap, and they're not all called the wealthiest generation, so there must be some reason for that. But
My guess is they were able to buy homes when they were very cheap, and then
They bank away all the rest
yeah,
of
and
the
then
money.
save a lot of money.
well, yeah, that's the root of a lot of that OK Boomer stuff. Is
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, houses were $26 when you were
Yeah,
coming out of
right,
school.
right, right.
4 years, $9,000.
4 years of college, yeah, exactly.
that.
9,000.
And you got-
$500.
You got
Yeah.
free books.
Yeah, free books.
Yeah, so the weekend was at Thursday. That was Thursday and Saturday were kind of just like, oh, man. And then Friday night, I had a great show. Sold out, packed, made a bunch of money on merch. They loved me. It was very much so one of those, I never find females funny, but you were good type of audiences, which they are more generous, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
it's more of a novelty to them.
Play it up.
Yeah, I was
Be
fine
like,
with
hey,
it.
you finally think a woman's funny? Pay up,
Right.
bitches.
But so I was about a half hour south of Grand Rapids, and Chad Daniels, who's been on the show before, he was headlining the comedy club that was in Grand Rapids. So I drove up, hung out, and it was just funny because I've worked with him before. I go out on the road with Dan Cummins a lot, and they are both selling out shows, and I'm just laughing because I'm like, I had my Chinese government guy with 20 people in a basement, and then this is what it could be. But then it almost made me appreciative because it's like, I know that those guys did this for a long time. Like,
yeah.
this is
A
just
long
one of the
time.
steps that you do this for 15 years.
Oh yeah, they closed
and
for
you-
Mason-Dixon back in the day. Yeah.
But it was cool to see, like, in the same weekend, see that other side of it too, where it's like, okay, I'm booking myself on these one-nighters that are a couple $100 in a hotel, and I'm
Imagine
eating
if
free
Mason-Dixon
food and-
blows up.
Dude.
I mean, back in the day, you know, Dan Whitney, people were like, "Hey, he's okay," and he starts doing Larry the Cable Guy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that guy, yeah."
It
now
was
he's
just-
doing arenas.
It was just a
Or he
funny
was.
shift in, like, dynamic to go from that and then walk into, like, a completely sold-out room, and everybody's all hyped up, and people are shouting stuff from a podcast and making T-shirts, and I was just like, it gets better. You just gotta keep
Yeah, but yours
going,
is a
you
better
know?
story.
Oh, yeah.
There's
yeah,
no
but
story to, oh yeah, sold out show was great.
It's, yeah, smashed.
Fantastic,
Everybody
yeah.
had fun.
Sold
got
out
drunk.
shirts. Yeah.
Right,
That ain't a
yeah.
story, you know?
Yeah.
I was wedged in between a guy pretending to be a Southern stock car driver and an 87-year-old man
Right.
who dropped his set list and then started riffing on the Chinese government. Now that's a story.
It was the slowest riff, the Chinese
The facial recognition.
government, and then ding 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 ding. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this is what it is.
But you should have asked him when he got off stage. Oh my God, that was so.
So when we
Like,
were
do you have an
sitting,
agent?
when we were sitting beforehand, the owner and the booker who also hosted were all sitting at like the table just BSing, right? And then the old guy, I'm pretty sure his name was Paul, looked at the owner of the venue and was like, Paul, you need to get my chair. And then he took like a chair with arms on stage, and I looked at the old guy. I was like, oh, are you a comic? And I didn't mean for it to sound like rude.
Condescending.
Well, condescending, I guess. But he was like, yeah, I've performed here every month for 4 years. And he was like, not mad at me, but I could tell he was a little bit annoyed. But I was like, I swear I thought that maybe like you said, he's the owner's dad, or he
Yeah.
lived upstairs or something like that. And they were kind of,
Well, one of those is probably true, which
Yeah.
is why they throw him up there. I'm 48 performances deep.
right.
And I
How
feel
is-
like it's going well.
How are you supposed to know if he's a comic if he's so silent?
Yeah, right. He gives no clues. But it was a fun weekend. It was a
I
really
don't
good
like
time.
to telegraph my hilarity to strangers. I like for them to pay.
Good
I
weekend.
never saw women being allowed to be funny.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
We were barely letting them vote.
He was probably the one who booed when the guy was like, your headliner's a millennial.
Boo!
Ew, gross.
I'm
with all your equal rights.
I'm fascinated though at how many people feel compelled, based on your anecdotes, How many people feel compelled to tell you that they never thought women were funny until they saw you?
All the time.
Because that tells me,
all the time.
and no disrespect to you,
No, not at all.
but there are a lot of funny female comics. That tells me that those people have either never seen one before, or it's just a very strange
Well,
thing.
What do you
gotta
think the
think,
Venn
too.
diagram of people that don't like the female announcer and people that don't think women are funny?
Oh,
Do you think
100%.
it's-
That's a
just-
circle.
It's a circle.
That's one
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
These people, too, you got to think they're from really small towns. So they go to this comedy show once a month, and it's booked through a dude who's in his 50s, who's books basically like people he knows or other road dogs or whatever. So if they get 12 shows a year, they might get 1 or 2 women, maybe.
Yeah.
So, and that's if they go to every single month.
But this
So
is
it's-
also
it's-
happening to you in Cleveland.
It happens
and
all the time.
It happens everywhere. So it's not just
I'm
a
trying
small
to back
town
them
thing.
up where I'm like, they
no,
don't see a
back
lot
them
of
up.
comedy.
No, they're
I don't
idiots.
know.
They're
They are
idiots,
idiots, you're
and
right.
that's let them. You know, they're just not experiencing the world, or they
Or
have a very
maybe
closed mind.
Maybe this is their move, and they tell every female comic that.
Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, I didn't think women were funny until I saw you, and now I'm sure of it. Ha ha ha! Good night.
I've said it 1,000 times before. If you want to compliment a comedian who happens to be female, you can just say, "I enjoyed your set.
You're very funny.
You're very funny. I had a very good." You don't have to say,
have to.
"Hate women."
Yeah.
Wish they would be quiet.
You don't have to
but-
tell us to stick with it.
Yeah, right.
Stick with it.
That's what people say to me.
going.
Like, I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this. Like, this is how I pay my bills. I'm doing fine.
Who told you to stick with
I don't
it?
know. I've had
People do it
people tell
all the
all the
time.
time. They're like, yeah,
Hey, keep it up.
Yeah, you're doing good.
You know what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's a
just
nice
keep
thing to
going.
say. That's
Yeah,
not an
but
insult.
but it's condescending.
In a big way.
I
Yeah.
doubt they mean it to be, though.
But it
Keep
still
it up.
is.
Hey, you know.
Hey, stick with it.
Yeah, keep it up.
It
Yeah,
means
yeah.
that, like, if that set hadn't gone well, maybe I was just just giving up.
It means don't
Yeah.
stop doing it. They like what you did. Don't
I
stop
guess.
doing it.
At least you guys get that. I get, don't quit your day job. When I tell them I'm on the radio, they're like, you're Poundcake? Oh.
Do you tell them that this is
Yeah, right,
also
people
a
love
day
you.
job?
Yeah.
We're on in the daytime?
Well, I don't give those people that much of my time. Like, I don't give them that much of my time after that. I'm like, oh, okay, I see where your head's at.
You're very divisive. There's as many people that hate you. There's more that love you.
It's
And
funny,
they're very
though.
vocal
That
about it.
said,
Yeah.
don't quit your day job.
So
I've
you
got
get
a
that 10
break.
grand.
Chris McQuanzica, that's coming up the 29th. Boy, if you want to tell Mary in person that she should stick with it.
Don't normally think you're funny.
I don't normally think women are funny, but I saw you at Chris McQuanzica, and you were a delight. It is the 29th of this month at the Agora with a lot of very funny people performing, so I'll have those tickets for you shortly. 35192, if you want to send a text, get to us at alancoxshow.com.
The Alan Cox Show on 100.7 WMMS. And everywhere you go on our free iHeartRadio app. With $1 million, you could make